post-pandemic, our clients, which are large multinational corporates, are facing a number of key challenges as it relates to payments automation, KYC, and a number of different areas of improvement across the treasury workflow. So we're working on implementing new age technology to help solve some age-old problems that we've seen across the industry for a good time running now. We've brought a digital-first, cloud-based, API-native platform to the wholesale banking space, and that spans our liquidity, our payments, as well as our lending practices. So that's where we've seen solutions being brought to market for corporates, especially within the treasury management space, to solve some of their key problems today.
So I think one of the things that we're seeing a significant spike to is the whole need for automation. So as you look at customer experience, what more and more customers require from the banks is to be able to fulfill instantaneously. So if I ask for a loan, I want the money in my account immediately, which requires the entire kind of process and the underlying applications to be automated, to be rationalized. I think the other piece that we're also starting to see is, especially on the retail banking side, Kevin, is low interest rate environment. There's going to be a need to take out a radical amount of cost, particularly as work is being moved back onshore. Again, automation is the way in which banks are looking to do this. And then last but not least, I think we're starting to see a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning to make that automation intelligent. So I think what we're increasingly starting to find is that the banks are having to make choices around either customer journeys or around domains, and then look at transforming the entire vertical. So what needs to happen very quickly is to look not just at the channels, but also the process, the underlying applications, and then, as Kevin mentioned, the infrastructure. So we've got a modern, resilient platform that's playing in this particular space. I think the other thing I would really highlight is the fintechs are becoming the engine for innovation here. So these platforms have to be API enabled in order to seamlessly collaborate with those particular fintechs.
The only thing I would add is, the ability for a bank to implement new technology actually allows us to operate really within sort of an art of the possible ecosystem, where we can take age-old problems that clients have always faced, only because that's the way things have always been done. And as Likhit said, the idea of new technology allows us to break some of those traditional norms, which have caused tons of problems for both corporate, small business, as well as consumer customers across the value chain. I would say, the fact that we're back here at Money20 in person in 2021 has only just continued to show over the 10 years of this gathering that partnership and co-opetition, if you will, between fintechs, banks, and others throughout the value chain is really the approach. It's a forward-leaning, positive, proactive way to find core competencies across the different players and actually melding them into acquisitions, partnerships, and really have a go-to-market that brings the end customer a really fantastic solution that's not possible today. So I do believe that the old days of fintechs disrupting or killing or being the anti-bank, I think we've just seen that shift in a lot of the dialogue this week so far and a lot of the partnerships that have hit the public press in recent history.
No, I think, Kevin, that's very, very well said, right? So I think, two things that I'd highlight. One is participation orchestration. I think increasingly the banks are realizing that they need to orchestrate these ecosystems and take the lead together with the fintechs in order to kind of create a proposition that really adds a lot of value for the customers of the bank. Solve the basic need of the customer for the bank, not just the financial services aspect of it, right? The second point that I would like to make here is the return on equity. If banks really start to use the assets that they've got in terms of their customer bases, the trust that they have with those particular customers, and orchestrate these ecosystems, they're going to start to operate in areas where return on equity is well north of 20%, which will be a very good return for what the banks are looking for. I think if they start to participate in ecosystems that are being set by other people and lose control of that customer, then you're going to see a rapid decline in that return on equity, because the banks would then become commodity players. So I think the major challenge is, not a lot of banking companies are taking an enterprise-wide approach here and really focusing on those domains that are going to move the needle for them. You see a number of these programs have been run in silos. They're looking at channels separately from what they're doing with processes, separately with what they're doing from applications. They're controlled by different parts of the bank. They're also controlled by different elements within the bank, and that then doesn't give you the return that you need. More importantly, I would turn around and say that you're getting a real confluence between business, technology, and data. I mean, ultimately, I think banks are becoming technology players that are using data very much as that particular fuel. So I think if you're not working together with those domains, then you're not going to generate, Kevin, I think the value that we're looking for, right?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, if we had to pick two things for us to boil it down to, I would have to go with simple and real time. Right, so we've seen all corporates, all consumer, all small business clients really looking to simplify their workflow and have their banking partners make things just that much easier for them, whether that's account opening, whether that's fraud monitoring, or whether that's customer service. Simple is key. And how do you empower that? The new technology that we're seeing here this week obviously shows that real time and instant is the next big thing, right? We're finally at a point where payments are becoming real time. APIs make information reporting for any sort of platform, any sort of banking ecosystem real time, and that's going to deliver value that previously was just untapped within the overall ecosystem. And so that's where, again, simple and real time or instant are sort of the two key themes where we could actually see some fantastic improvement to the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, maybe a couple of things that I'd like to add to what Kevin just said, right? I think the first thing is this kind of consumerization of business, right? So even on the corporate side, more and more of the clients of the banks have got used to an experience that they have in their personal lives, right? And they want to see exactly that same simplification, that same convenience, that same instant fulfillment, in their corporate lives. Right? Treasurers want to see the same experience in their corporate lives as they're seeing in their personal lives, right? So I think that's one very key thing that we're seeing. I think the other key thing where the fintechs have made a lot of progress, and I've been very encouraged with what I've seen here, is they're recognizing that they've got to start looking at things like regulation, security, data privacy right up front. So this is not something you start worrying about when you become a more mature fintech. You've got to have that right from the start, which is making it much easier for the banks to be able to adopt that technology quickly. I mean, until very recently, I spent 3 years in Singapore, right? And most of the banking executives that I was speaking to, the thing that was keeping them awake at night was those big tech companies. They were not that worried about what was happening with the other banks. They were worried about, what we've been calling the tech fins. And I think what that's done is it's made the banks really accelerate the way in which they are digitizing, right? Really accelerating that customer experience, that customer convenience, that instant fulfillment, taking much more advantage of data than they have been doing previously. And I think when you do that and you combine that with the customer base that the bank has, the trust that the bank has, I think they're able to compete very effectively with those tech fins, and that's been shown in various parts of the world now.
Just to add on, I believe the recent sort of movement in that space is super exciting for us. These are captive, branded populations of users who are looking for services from the brand names that they work with on a daily basis. And so this concept of embedded finance is really something that we've heard throughout the conference here at 2020 this week, where embedded finance, I think, is only at the beginning of sort of its growth curve, where if these large retailers or these large consumer-facing brands enter the banking or financial services space, that's just one more opportunity for a large bank or a fintech to actually partner with these commercial institutions to deliver that end service to the end user, whether that's a consumer, a business, or another large company. So I actually see the space as extremely exciting, very nascent, and the future opportunities for collaboration and partnership growth are pretty much endless and limitless, I would say.
Yeah. And again, to add to what Kevin said, right, I think it is going to change. I mean, we're seeing this, but it is going to require a mindset change and a cultural change, because banks need to think about, what is that core problem that the customer is seeking to solve, and bring an ecosystem together through embedded finance to solve that core problem. with a seamless embedding then of the financial services aspect of that particular core problem. I think the banks that restrict themselves purely to being financial services companies and are not taking that kind of stance, I think they're going to find that very soon, they either find, at best they find that the margins on their products, the market share that they have starts to diminish significantly. And worst, I think it'll be like a Kodak moment for them, right? Where a very large chunk of their business just disappears.